I'm Adam Niffen.
And I'm Jeremy Cocaine.
This is Smith Welding Restoration. Nothing to add?
Well, that's the way we work. That's what we do. We make things pretty.
Alright, so you guys are going to wander around the shop with me, okay? We cool? Let's check this out. This is a welder I've got for sheet metal. Okay, they retail, I think you can walk out the store with one of these with wire and tips and everything for, somewhere around six bills, brand new. You don't have to have this. But when you're doing body work, when you're doing hobbyist work, you got to have something that runs gas. If you're replacing panels with a flux core, there's acid in that flux core and it's gonna fuck you, it's gonna come back out. So you can find good welders, Hobart, Miller, Lincoln, ESAB, various brands out there. They all have their faults and they all have their good points. Now, I got in that bottle, gosh, I want to say that bottle was like $2 1/4 to purchase. Okay, you can rent bottles too. I want to own what I've got on the floor. And in every shop, coffee maker. This welder here, I'll kind of give you a heads up on. This is welded a lot of this structure up. This is for an RV project a friend of mine is working on. That's welding up most of this steel. This is all 1/8 inch or lesser for the most part. That'll handle this. It's not structural, it's not suspension. But what you got here is your basic welder. You get this thing set up, you want to run it. This welder here itself can run good between 15 and 20 pounds off this bottle, and these are all mucked up, so I take them off so I can set my gauges. 15 and 20 pounds nominal when you pull the trigger. That will give you a good gas flow for shielding. What your shielding gas does is keeps oxygen off the weld so it doesn't bubble up and create inclusions, and it keeps it clean. That's what it's for. That's what your flux and your flux core is for too. Problem with flux core is there's acid in that resin. Now, this is a Cadillac fucking model helmet. This one will set you back almost as much as the welder, okay? You don't need that. Just scratch that off your to-do list, alright? What we have here, this is what you want to look for in a reasonable sheet metal welder, okay? You see them all the time. You see all kinds of welders. You got your on-off. Okay? And then I have to turn the gas on, then I can start welding. But this is what I'm showing you here. This is what's important. That's an infinite dial is what they refer to that as. As is that. That's an infinite dial. You get these welders where you can adjust your flow, your wire speed up here. You can adjust your wire speed infinitely. You just dial it up a little at a time. But they have like click, 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 and that's all you got. These positive stops for the power. This particular welder is awesome for the hobbyist, if for nothing else. You click it around to here. What are you running? 2-4 wire, 3-0 wire, and then that's on the blue dial. You dial in what you're welding. All the way down to 3/16 they say you can do. And if I'm just doing sheet metal on a car, I'm probably over here somewhere, over here to here, and I weld up sheet metal. I generally run my welder hot up to about 18. It lays my welds down nice and flat, but you don't want that positive click. You want it to run gas for doing body work. See, this is what I run for gas. Argon, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. It's a relatively cheap cylinder to, they call this Stargon. Some places call it Moongon. It's an inexpensive cylinder to fill. I think this one was $50, $60 to fill. I had like $250 outlaying cost to buy the cylinder. Set up the welder, wire, A bottle that size, that's a 180. You don't need that as a hobbyist. That lasts us for a few months, generally doing sheet metal. You can go with a little 80 or even a 40. I would suggest going with an 80. That way it's short enough, it's low enough to the ground, you can roll it up underneath a bench and disappear. So you're sitting at outline cost about $900 out the door. We're going to start with safety, okay? These are welding gauntlets. Big heavy gloves that are insulated. These are just your regular mechanics gloves. I don't suggest welding with these because they're not leather. They're microfiber or some synthetic material. They'll burn and melt. I wear these when I'm welding oftentimes, some kind of leather glove. Sometimes I'll wear a light glove on my trigger hand, and I'll wear a heavy glove when I'm trying to manipulate the metal that I'm installing. This is a helmet you can pick up, your Harbor Freight special. They're like 40 bucks, and that does well. That's a friend of mine's. It's in the shop. This will be for brazing and cutting. It's a number 5 shade lens. Do not MIG weld with this. You'll burn your fucking eyeballs out. That you MIG weld with. It can go up to probably 12, 13. It goes from 9 to 13 auto darkening. Okay. Safety goggles, safety glasses for those that don't need goggles, and a respirator. Anytime you're grinding on an old car, wear a respirator. So we got most of our safety gear out of the way. You're gonna do some metal fabricating. Go get you an old Sawzall at the pawn shop for 60 bucks. Angle grinders you can pick up cheap enough. Okay, that you can put sanding discs on, you can put cutting discs on. I got a high dollar cutting blade on here right now. I'm not upset with it. It's about 50 bucks, but I'm not mad at it. It's done its job. And this is just a small pod of my body hammers. Nice flat face body hammer. I keep it cleaned and smooth. This I use for a lot of my metal fabricating. It's older than the Hills. It was passed down to me. It's probably close to 100 years old. I just put any old hammer handle I could find on it. This is my favorite dolly, and all it is a piece of 1/2 inch steel. Okay, but you got other dollies. You got a spoon. You got your various dollies. I don't know where my heel dolly went. It disappeared on me. Those are at least 60 years old. Hand seamer. More handy than you'll ever understand. A good pair of snips. Indispensable. You can cut up to 16 gauge with these. 16 gauge is a problem, but you can. Okay, so I was telling you about using an alloy or a different alloy than what your parent metal is. These I use to back up my welds. If I'm plug welding a hole, I'll back up that hole and weld on this. That's what I use this for. This is aluminum, that's copper. This is just a big piece of like 1.5 inch copper pipe that's been flattened out. When you're welding, you gotta fasten shit together. You got plug welding pliers. These are cheap plug welding pliers, but they function. They do just fine. Your various vice grip clamps. C-clamps are handy as hell. I use them all the time. This is another stone. I use this for dressing my welds. I don't lay it down. I don't grind like this. I cut my welds down, and then I'll use something like this, and you can put it on an angle grinder. They got attachments, or you can use air. I use air. I do my metal finish with this. I'll cut welds down with one of these. See, this is your hi-fi. This is your expensive off the fucking truck tool. Okay, you don't need that. Let's just go to Harbor Freight and pay 10 bucks. I've had this thing for about 6 years. Okay. Various die grinders that help. 90-degree die grinder that I put my roll lock on. These little gadgets are worth their weight. They're about 30 bucks a box. You can metal finish very well with them. This is something else I use for my metal work, my metal finishing. I bump dents out with this. I got several of these 1/2-inch round rods rolling around here, and they're part of my metal work. When you're doing metal fabricating, when you're doing metal work, these tools are almost indispensable. I use most of these every day. Air chisel or air hammer, so you can knock welds, you can bust seams, you can cut sheet metal, you can cut a panel out, and then you come back and make the final incision with this. Just get the material out of your way with this, come back and work it with this. You'll need a drill, handheld. I got a cordless drill and it's over there somewhere. A cordless drill I use the heck out of. When you're doing your metal work, you need basic measuring and marking devices. That's probably older than most of you folks who are going to watch this. I know it's older than me. These help. Little mics, they help a lot. So these are basic spread of what you got going on. Alright, you can get a reasonable set at anywhere for like 30 bucks with dollies and hammers. They're not great, they're not a Williams, okay? They'll work. You got hammers floating around, use a fucking trim hammer for all we care. That last landscape project you had, use that rock chipping hammer you got. These all can be purchased. This was 30 bucks, 10 bucks, 10 bucks, 10 bucks, 10 or 15 bucks. I mean, you can get this whole setup for under $100, okay? Your safety gear, and you got 40. You got 10 bucks here, you got 10 bucks here. That's, you know, all these items are about 10 bucks a whack. Your respirator is about 20 if you buy it at a paint supply store. These all, you just go down to Harbor Freight and pick up the cheapest ones on the shelf. You can get them as cheap as $3 a piece. Get as many as you can, because it helps. You know, I got several. Always have a heavier hammer around, something big to beat shit with, okay? I keep various wooden blocks. And this has become an indispensable weapon for forming panels. Okay, one side I milled out pretty flat with a belt sander. The other side I put a little dome on it. I use this, it's a piece of black pipe I drilled through and I just smashed it in. That's it. It's a piece of green treat 4x4. There's a lot of this shit you can do yourself, make yourself out of scraps. This is another handy gadget I'm very fond of. Get yourself a couple of them. They're just too handy to have around. So we've kind of gone through your basic setup of hand tools. That gives us a good spread. We'll get into using some of these on later episodes. This is a shrinker, stretcher, a shrinker, and a stretcher. You can make wheelhouse panels with this. You can fabricate quarter panel sections. You can fabricate door sections, depending on what you're dealing with. You can use. This is a cheap 30-inch brake that I put on a stand that I was given. Okay, it clamps down. It's just a piece of metal. See, it clamps down. I tried welding to this shit. It didn't. I had a bad idea. How's that? I use little clamps. Break the piece of metal. It's a 30-inch table. It has everything I need it to right now. Okay. Drill presses are handy, but wholly unnecessary. You know, you get yourself a basic spread of tools. I don't use that very often, but when I use it, it's handy. I use that mostly to surface hammers and dollies. Next indispensable object to me is a little table that I can work at. The frame's metal, the top is metal, it's thin, it's only 16 gauge. But it works for small weldments. I mounted a vise onto it, it's handy. It's a crappy vise, but it's handy to use. So this section here, we kind of went through your welding and metal fab, the how-to tools required. We'll get into some how-to metal fab. We'll put together some neat trinkets and toys for the house to play with, or shit to hang on the wall. That'll come in later segments. I'm going to get off here. I'll let you folks go. Remember, most of this stuff is quantity matters, it's not quality. All these tools, with the exception of that cutoff saw from this Snap-on truck, is shit you can pick up at Harbor Freight. And don't buy anything off a Snap-on truck. You're a hobbyist. It's a waste of your time. One last gadget. Big 3x3 tube or 4x4 tube. Keep it around to shape stuff on. Same thing with that 6x6 wood. You know, this is my work table. I made a mess of it. I'm getting tools out to show you all, but this is what I'm blessed with to work on. This is my workbench. And it's always this dirty, so you clean it off. You clean it off to put a project on it, and it's dirty again. We're gonna come back in next time. We're gonna get into some body tools. I'll show you a little bit about the compressor and what you're dealing with there, and then we'll move on from body tools into your paint tools, and then we'll start doing some projects together.
Wow, made it to the end of the video. Thanks for checking in. Come back on the next one. See what the hell we're up to next time. Subscribe, comment. Find us on over on the old Facebook, Smith Welding Restoration LLC on Facebook. Numbers at the beginning. Have any questions? Call.